So hello and welcome back to the Institute of Refrigeration's Tip of the Iceberg podcast. And I'm joined today by John Skelton and Richard Parr. Both are members of the Institute of Refrigeration and have been really heavily involved in the work we're doing both on skills and on the net zero agenda. So we're going to kick straight off with giving a little bit of a background and ask them each to introduce themselves. So John, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, my name's John Skelton. I work for Marks and Spencer's and I'm technical manager looking after ME and R services. Been in the industry over 30 years now. Started off as a refrigeration apprentice. Had a fantastic apprenticeship with Sainsbury's, which I think gave me a really good standing for my career after that. So really keen to see other individuals enjoy the industry as much as I do. But yeah, active member of the Institute and thoroughly enjoy it.
Thanks, John. And Richard, do you want to say a few words?
I'm Richard Parr, Engineering Director of Ryan J. Joined the industry by chance after graduating with a degree in innovation. Been in the industry for 17 years and I'm really sort of passionate on bringing through the next generation, having been a graduate myself.
Thank you both. I mean, the reason we invited you both to come along was that we wanted to focus this theme on this discussion all about skills and training. And as I said before, you've both been involved in the initiatives that the Institute's doing. And just for anybody who doesn't know too much about the Institute of Refrigeration, we are a voluntary organization. And people like John and Richard get involved in their own time. They're carving time out of really busy and highly responsible jobs to get involved in working on these issues for the Institute. So I guess, my first question for you then is, what gives you that drive to try to find the time to commit yourself to working on what can be quite a tricky issue of the whole thing about developing skills and people, and particularly with the view to the future? Richard, should we kick off with you this time?
Yeah, so really, for me, since having children, I've really sort of felt that I want to give something back. And being part of the Institute and giving up time to be involved with some of the working groups is a real fantastic way to do that. The skills development on net zero very, very much is on point with where we're heading as a business. We're having to evolve our individuals, upskill our individuals, and it's sort of something that we all need to be on board with as individuals, ethically, as businesses moving forward to be successful. So it's very much a key part of my role in the business and where I want to drive the next generation of engineers that I've got within the business to be passionate and be all encompassing, really.
So you've got that shared personal and professional agenda then as far as skills go?
Definitely, very much so, yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. And John?
It's very similar, Miriam. It's very selfish, I suppose, for me, both from a personal and business perspective. I would like the individuals in our industry to be the best they can be, and I'd like our industry to be more respected for what it does. And a key part of that is to allow individuals to develop and really make the most of their careers. I've thoroughly enjoyed my career in the RACHP industry, and I'd like others to do the same. From a professional perspective, the better the individuals are that come into our stores and into our depots, and the quicker they can fix things, that's going to make a big difference to us as a business. And we want people to come in and be safe and be able to fix things quickly. And I think the carbon net zero agenda adds another dynamic to it as well, because it's not just about fixing things. There's a bit around making sure things that are operating correctly, that systems are operating in harmony with other systems in buildings as well. So I think it's having a bit of a broader understanding of how systems work and how they interact with other systems. So I think the industry has got a huge opportunity. There's going to be a lot of change over the next few years. A lot of businesses are going to have to spend a lot of money to hit those targets. I see that as a great opportunity for our industry. But for us to capitalise on that, we're going to need to make sure that we got suitably trained and skilled operatives working right through from the design, the install, commissioning and the maintenance of those systems. So just see it as a great opportunity.
Reminds me a bit of stuff that has come up in the past when we are in meetings, say, with government, talking about things like F-gas regulations and skills, and people talk about non-compliant and those who don't do the training or don't do the registration. And my response on that one has always been, well, I can't speak for those people. I speak for people who want to do the best job. People, our members, people like yourselves, are really committed to not just getting a job done, but doing it well and committed to their industry. So it's really good to know that we've got people who want to see things improving, not just dealing with the day-to-day issues. So moving into that sort of net zero and beyond refrigeration, one of our key areas that we've identified that needs to be addressed is developing the best people and skills in order to move together on that journey towards net zero. So I was going to ask both of you, can you tell us what you think that means, the best people and skills?
I don't mind answering that one. I think it's touching on what I was sort of saying on earlier, really. I think it's having engineers that are attending sites or getting involved with systems that really understand the implications of what they're doing to the system and how those systems interact with other systems. I don't think we can just work in isolation anymore. I think we have to have a better understanding of how systems work to make sure that they are, you can put in energy efficient, carbon neutral equipment, but if you don't run it well, it's still, it's not going to give you the benefits you want if you don't maintain it properly, if you're not specifying the right kit for the right applications. And I think is making sure that we've got suitably trained people to be able to make those decisions right through the process. I think there's been a bit in the past where we've done some fantastic work in the refrigeration industry and air conditioning industry to move forward, because I think we've always had those challenges ever since the sort of Montreal Protocol to really put our house in order, and I think we've been leaders in that field. When you look at the carbon challenge the world's got, I think RACHP industry has risen to all those challenges on a regular basis. But it's not just about the specification of the kit now. It is the application, it is the maintenance, it is how it interacts with other systems in installations and systems, bringing that all together and having people that can have and make those informed decisions.
It sounds as though you really have a vision of everything being connected. You can't disconnect skills from innovation, from business strategies. It all sort of links together so intricately. And then Richard, from your point of view?
Very much. Sort of something we talk about in the office quite frequently is getting people off the train tracks, actually getting people to lay their own track. That's sort of a real big thing for us. And I think if you can start getting engineers, whether that's design engineers on site or out to that first reactive call, starting to sort of lay their own track and understand to lay their own track, it really assists in their knowledge, their skills, and ultimately their behaviour. In the journey to net zero, we can't just keep doing what we've been doing. The industry's been fantastic at adopting change, but there's still a lot more change to be done. And as John touched on, integration with other systems and other contractors is a massive part of that journey. I think really sort of the blinkers are off, and getting people to understand that in the first instance is sort of a key challenge. And then once you've broken down that hurdle, I kind of feel that people are a lot more embracing in terms of wanting to develop their skills, wanting to move forward and come on the journey with you.
So can you say a bit more about this idea of laying your own tracks? Do you mean that they should really think more broadly about skills rather than picking up one or two qualifications, but forward planning what they need to achieve the aims?
Yeah, completely. So something I'm really trying to push with my graduates at the moment is what is your path? What is your track? Where do you want to go? You need to drive that forward. You bring your ideas for professional development to the table. You tell me, you contribute as much as us sort of top down, trying to push them in a certain direction. And I've sort of found that really works really well, because they're buying in from day one, and then they really want to upskill themselves. The bit that we're trying to do at the moment is to try and take what we've done in certain parts of our business and try and roll it out to other areas, in the service engineer field. And that's a bit more of a challenge. We've started the journey, I think, is the best way to describe it.
And do you think that's a typical approach? They always talk about the sector as being dominated by small employees. It might be just one person or two people with an apprentice. Is that something that everyone can do?
Yeah, I don't see why not. It's employee engagement. If your employees feel that they're basically driving the company forward through their own professional development and where they're developing their career and their skills, it brings harmony and ultimately more of a motivated workforce.
And what do you think, John, from your point of view, not wanting to put you too much on the spot, but what could the customers do to help organizations to get a shared objective as far as skills and training go?
Yeah, I think that is a really tough one, Miriam, and I know retailers have sort of helped in certain situations with funding of training, normally when there's been sort of step changes in technology. I think it's just more trying to influence more than anything else at the moment. So just really trying to, it's interesting when I talk to most sort of managing directors over a cup of coffee, the thing that normally comes through is that if we had the right skill sets and the right people, the businesses would be more profitable. You know, there is a correlation between the two, and we've got to just drive that forward. Now, I know that it is a really challenging market out there, and it's difficult for companies to find the funds for training, but I think the rewards you get out of it, you know, what Richard was touching on there, is that employees that go through this path of growth and of personal development, it's far more rewarding for them, and they give back more to the business. So I think it's something that businesses should be looking at and going, you know, how do we keep our people engaged? How do we help them? And there's all this bit around, well, if we train somebody up, will they leave? But if as an industry we all set our sights on training, if we all try and raise the levels, we will all benefit from it. I was sort of listening to Richard there, and you look at refrigeration, really, if you've got the basics, you can move anywhere in the RACHP industry, because fundamentally the basics are the same. So if we've got the right skill sets and we're teaching the right criteria to start with, hopefully those skills will be transferable throughout our industry. So I think all we can do is try and influence, really, Miriam. The challenge is certainly for us here at Marks and Spencer's, we've got a big challenge with the commitments we're making around carbon net zero, and we're going to need the best people to help us meet those challenges and to help us change a lot of equipment and help us spend a lot of money to get to where we need to be.
You'd mentioned this idea of being the leaders in our field, and I wondered if there's leadership around skills that organizations are developing a joint agenda. Going back to Richard's train tracks, you know, are we all on the same track?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to get there, Miriam. I think, you know, the work we've done on the Trailblazer, you know, that was an industry-led program. So that was an employer-led program that was coming up with skill sets that employers felt their engineers needed to have to go through the apprenticeship. So that was part of driving that agenda. I think as an institute, we've pulled together a number of papers recently that are hoping to provide anyone in our industry or new to our industry with a bit of a clear understanding of what skills and training that they would need to progress. So I think we're starting to sort of drive that agenda. But I think it's, you know, listening to people like Richard, people that are passionate in the industry. It's those of this that are to try and get that passion going, get more people to be passionate about it, and get people to understand that, you know, it's a great industry, and actually that the better trained you are, the more you're going to get out of it. The point I'm trying to make is that at the moment, we need to come up with a way of how we sell the training that's provided to the end user so that the value can be get back from the contract.
I think that was what I was kind of trying to get to, is it the contractor's responsibility or the individual's responsibility to work out what skills they need, or is it something we as an industry need to consider as an objective for everybody? You know, whose responsibility is it? I'm in a very fortunate position where I often speak and see students who are winning prizes as the best student. And there are often students that come forward and say, well, I really want to do training. My employer couldn't support me for whatever reason. So I did night school and I traveled or took my holidays and I did my training. So sometimes you see these incredible commitments of individuals. Then you see companies who put in place like whole scale training. So incredible commitments of one or two companies. And then, you know, I just wondered if there's a little bit of, rather than it being everybody doing a bit, how we can pull that together and as an industry feel that we're working on the same objectives to get to the same place.
Yeah, I think we can give a steer to the industry, but I think it's got to be, I've always felt it needs to be an industry-led initiative rather than a customer-led initiative. I think that's where it's most successful. You and I have worked with other companies in the past that have been part of Trailblazer schemes, and the sectors that have really made a success of it are the sectors that have got together and said, we need this for our industry. And they've used those employer-led trailblazer schemes to come up with training and skills that the industry needs. And I think that's where we need to be, is the industry needs to lead this. We need to get employers to say, these are the skills that we need for the various different tasks that are being carried out within our businesses, and really push those agendas, because I think that they'll get most out of their employees if they do that, and their employees will get the most out of the roles they're doing.
You know, as John mentioned there, if employers and employees are training, I do believe your customers notice and end users notice. It in principle should come back out as repeat business. Everyone wins and moves forward.
I can remember somebody who's not involved in the industry before talking about the cost of not getting things right the first time. When there's a cost for everybody, at that case, it's not just the contractor or the end user or even the individual. You don't get it right first time, it costs everybody an awful lot of grief and time and energy and money. So we know that puts us all in a really difficult position. I was going to come back on something else you were talking about, behaviours. Nowadays, the training world works along the lines of knowledge, skills and behaviour. So the underpinning theoretical knowledge, the skills, what you do, and the behavior of how you do it. And I was going to ask the really awkward question about which is more important, more significant, knowledge, skills, or behaviors. And maybe I think I know what I think the answer is, but I'll give that one back to you guys.
Yeah,
what do you think, Richard? Knowledge, skills, or behaviors? Obviously a mix of all three, but if you had to choose.
Because I think if your team are doing the right things and behaving in the right way, then you're moving forward. Great if they've got the knowledge and the skills, and that's what you try and encourage. But I think probably what I've learned on this journey to net zero, not every individual has got all the knowledge and all the skills. And actually what you're trying to build is a team that can tick all of those boxes as a collective. And if there's anyone out there that feels they've got all the skills, all the knowledge that can tick all the boxes for net zero, then please get them to send me their CV. At this moment, I don't feel that exists yet, and it's very much, okay, can you get a team together that can deliver on all of those things? And if you've got the behaviour ticked in the first instance, then you've got half a chance.
Behaviours are very.
They might have all that today, but tomorrow that might be different. That's the problem.
Is how you
John,
then apply your skills and your knowledge. So I also think there's a bit around behaviours that can be driven by skills and knowledge. If you're uncomfortable in the arena you're in because you haven't got the skills or the knowledge, that can be reflected in the behaviour you have. And I think there's a big bit around empowering people with the right skills and knowledge to then allow them to demonstrate the behaviours they need to be able to sort of really move things forward. And you touched on it with the point about first time fixes. There's lots of costs that come into not being able to achieve a first time fix. But from an engineer's point of view, there's nothing more frustrating than having to go back on a repeat call. And if you know that repeat call is because you didn't have the skills or knowledge to be able to fix it right in the first time, that's going to affect your behaviours and everything else. And I think there is a bit around this. It's a win-win when you get the training right, because everybody wins through it, and the engineer who's doing the work really wins, because they get the satisfaction that they deserve when they go out there and they do a good job. So yeah, I'd echo Richard. I think the behaviours is the one that will really sort of makes the game changer for an individual, but you need those underpinning skills and knowledge to make that work.
And do you see this requiring sort of changes in the way we do training, the way we approach training? We did our very first podcast, started talking about new ways of working. So should we be looking at new ways and being more flexible in our training?
For providing training, and you've also got to look at what works for different individuals. You know, I think we'll all have examples of people that we know that flourish in a exam environment, and others that don't, and then others that are. If someone draws something with crayons, for me, it normally sinks in. If it's a technical paper, I find it a little bit harder to understand. So I think you've got to tailor the training to the audience that is on the training. But I think it is about using technology. It's about using what's out there. it's engaging with students, I think, and really finding out what works for them and what doesn't work, and trying to make sure that our training is appropriate. I think we've all, through the last 2 years, done things very differently, and I think we've all found that you can use technology in different ways. And yeah, I think we definitely need to keep it fresh and keep looking at the opportunities for changing the way we train.
We're then moving into that sort of area of diversity as well, which kind of links in with some of the work the Institute does. Certainly we've worked with Steve Gill and on his diversity dyslexia events, and this idea that, you know, you need to have
I completely
different
agree.
ways and different people
I'm
in
dyslexic,
the teams,
so
in order for those teams
I'm
to be
good with
more
drawings,
effective.
I'm
So
good
whether
with
that's
diagrams,
having, you
but
know,
when
more
it comes to
female
reading, I
engineers
struggle a
or a
little bit.
mixed
So
teams of
you
different
have to
people at different
approach
levels
the
and
need of
different
the
people
individual
who
and
work
try and
in different
understand
ways.
that
And
individual.
that's all
I
part
think
of the way the
probably
whole
through
engineering
COVID, like
thing
John's
fits
mentioned,
together,
the last
is
couple of
from what
years,
I
training
understand,
feels like it's
the
become
way
a lot
things are
more
going.
accessible. You haven't just
So in
got to
terms
go to a
of
training
the future
centre
of
and
training, so
disappear
do
or
you
go
see
to a
that
college.
being
there
very
are
different, the
webinars
needs
online,
for
there's
training being very
online
different
training
to
courses.
the
It
basic
does feel that we're
engineering
in a new
skills?
era
People
when it
say
comes to
that
training, that
anybody can be
it's
taught
easier
to
to
use
move
a
forward.
spanner or to read a dial, and nowadays a lot of the calculations are online or they're provided with an app or a manual. Are the skills that are needed to help
I think it's
people
going to be
achieve
very
these net
similar,
zero aims
Miriam.
going to
I
be
think
any different to the skills
ultimately
that people
most
currently have?
tasks, if we're talking about tasks, mean that an engineer needs to go to site to fix something. So it's always going to be a hands-on element out there. I think it's, as Richard touched on there, I think we're going to see very differently, and it's already happening, is because of the accessibility of training. So, you know, if you bring a new piece of equipment into a situation, you can, if you want to, do a video of how to maintain it, how to fix it, typical faults, and have that readily accessible for an engineer when they turn up on site. So if an engineer walks in and it's a bit of kit they've seen for the first time, it's not that hard for them to be able to download a video off YouTube or another streaming service and being able to get a bit of information on how to fix it. And I think that's something that's going to become more and more prevalent. There's also the use of technology. So, you know, we're gathering huge amounts of data from systems, and with the Internet of Things, being able to do remote diagnostics or automated diagnostics, all those things are going to help. But I think ultimately, certainly from the days when I was on the tools, actually being able to put your hands on things and feel the temperature of pipes and listening to the way that systems are operating, there's still going to be those things that are always going to come into it as well to assist an engineer. But I still come back to it, if you've got the basic principles and you understand the basic principles, you can apply them to any of the situations. It's just there's different complexities to different systems. But yeah, I think we're going into a new world, and it's with the amount of information that can be Googled and accessible from mobile devices, I think it's going to be exactly what the engineers need, and hopefully that will complement what we're doing from a net zero perspective.
And then, Richard, you know, what do you think? Is there more complex technology? Is that going to be more skills, or is it going to be less skills because, you know, you just connect a computer to it?
I think with sort of the direction that we're going, especially with lower GWP refrigerants and A2Ls and A3s, hydrocarbons, there's more knowledge or more skills that's required to understand certainly some of the hazards associated to the direction we're moving in. So I think how people diagnose issues and how they solve the problem might be slightly different in terms of, you know, okay, rather than read the method statement that we've all had, actually that method statement can be posted on YouTube or physically sort of seen in a video. So
John,
I think
would you
that
agree with that?
element will change.
We've
But in
discussed
terms
it
of
before,
the
Miriam.
base
There's a lot of
knowledge and
technologies
skills
that are
of
coming into the marketplace
individuals,
and
actually, I think there's
technologies that we're selling
more
as
to learn
industry,
and
but
more to
they've got
understand
to be
as
set
we
up
move
and
forward.
commissioned correctly, because if they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. So, we need to make sure that people have the right skills. Again, I think there is a bit around how those pieces of equipment integrate with other systems in buildings as well, which is, I think, is going to become even more important to us as time goes on. But I think it's a time where we should be up in the skill levels rather than lower there.
So is the RAC engineer of the future, is that going to be a heating engineer as well as an air conditioning engineer, or do you never the twain shall meet?
We've got to do more with the waste heat from refrigeration systems. So we've got to do more with it. How we actually do that and what we do, it's got to be something that can be maintained and can be serviceable going forward, and we're going to need the right people to be able to do the whole thing. I think in the past, where there's been challenges around where systems have been combined, it's because we probably haven't had the right skill sets for both elements. So I think we are going to have engineers that understand heat reclaim, engineers that understand heat pumps. So there will be a heating element to, as the heating element is going to be as important as the cooling element in some situations. So it's having that broad understanding and that holistic understanding of a building.
Is that what you're seeing as well, Richard, that as well as getting the basics on the apprenticeship, you've got to get more and more complex, more and more higher skills for these new technologies?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I sort of almost feel we're no longer just simply refrigeration designers. A lot of what we're working on and that we're seeing from our customers at the moment, whether that's retail or industrial, is the integration. I don't think we've got a scheme going through our books at the moment that doesn't include heat reclaim, and thermal modeling of both refrigeration systems and the building is almost a kind of a request that we're getting together now. So it's a single kind of specialist rather than two separate specialists not talking to each other. It's very much filtering through as customers and end users start moving and gearing up their plans to become net zero.
Yeah, so net zero is already happening in terms of the new projects that are coming on and the refurb projects, where they're starting to look more broadly on both heating and cooling demands. Integrated heating and cooling was one of the foundations of the Beyond Refrigeration.
Completely. And obviously a lot of people have made big commitments, or businesses have made big commitments for 2030, 2035. So, those systems that we're designing now, installing, are still going to be in operation in 2035. So it is literally happening, and it's not maybe filtering all the way through everywhere, but there certainly is this integration of refrigeration, heating and cooling happening.
So the demand for higher skilled staff is only ever going to increase from what you're saying.
Yeah.
How well do we think the industry then is prepared? Because I hear a lot of concern from employers saying that there are some engineers who are really struggling, even with what they're doing at the moment. And others, obviously investing in training. I speak to a lot of trainers who are seeing that some of the best trainees coming out from the training programs as well. So, are we where we want to be, or are we at least again on track?
I think we're slightly behind the curve. I think we've done work as the institute in the past, which wasn't really a surprise, but we've got an aging demographic. We've got some shortfalls coming up, I think, in the industry, and we need to fill those. So I think we're slightly behind. I think there's a will there. I think the fact that there is this great opportunity with all the work that needs to be done to hit the carbon net zero targets must be a real incentive for businesses to make sure that the engineers are suitably trained. So I think we're behind the curve, Miriam, but I think there's a will to get to the right place. I think there's also a balancing act in there, and it's something that we've discussed on our education and training committee meetings, is that we don't necessarily have to have everyone in the industry to be at the same level of training. It's making sure that the individuals are appropriately trained for the tasks they're carrying out. I think there is the bit that I keep harping back onto, the fundamentals should be the starting point. I think it's making sure we've got suitable training for each of the different areas within the industry, but certainly, to make the most of what's coming and is ahead of us. I think we need to keep moving this at pace.
Did you want to add anything, Richard?
No, I feel the wheels are moving, but maybe not quite quick enough at the moment. It feels like we're going in the right direction. And I think if the work that the Institute's doing and its members, if we can keep pushing that work in, then it's going to be a good outcome overall.
So if either of you want to say, if you had a magic wand, what would be the ideal solution as far as skills and training goes? What would you like to see changing over the next 5 or 10 years?
I'll go. Okay. So what would I like to see changing over the next 5 or 10 years? I'd certainly like, from an institute point of view, for us to see the institute being able to register engineers with the Engineering Council, because I think that would be a big step forward. It would be nice as well, personally, from my point of view, if there was a minimum standard for engineers. I do look at some other disciplines out there, and there seems to be, you need to be gas safe, or you need to have your electrical qualifications, and if there was something in refrigeration that was similar, so some sort of professional qualification, I think that would be fantastic. Don't know whether we'll ever actually be able to achieve that.
Sort of concur with John. Actively encouraging people to become chartered engineers would be fantastic, and achieving a minimum standard. It does feel that a lot of people fall into the world of refrigeration rather than actually have an intended career path or ambition. I think maybe we've got to start younger in terms of career advisors in schools. It's an accepted career path and a respected career path, and maybe the fact that everyone might have a heat pump in their house one day, that might open doors for that to happen.
We've got to stop thinking of refrigeration as being a fridge in the corner and start thinking about it as what it's really contributing.
We sometimes go under the radar. If we can keep kind of pushing what we do as an industry into the limelight, I think over the next sort of 5-10 years, the other elements will follow.
I hear that there's a child's colouring book or storybook on the offing that's coming out of America about refrigeration, but it's a difficult one to make a real impact in. What would you recommend for anybody who's listening and to address the skills challenges?
I'd encourage people to sign up to the STEM program. That's something we've been supporting as an institute, and I think that's a great way of tapping into the younger generation, as Richard alluded to, getting out into schools and telling students what a great career you can have in the RACHP industry, and really giving them real life examples of it. Refrigeration in all its shapes or forms touches all of our lives on a daily basis. As Richard said, it's often forgotten, I think, by the public, how much their life is influenced by refrigeration. The food they eat, the comfort when they're at home, at work, the medicines they take. The list is endless of where refrigeration helps everybody on a sort of day-to-day basis. But getting out, I think, and talking to schools and talking to students and giving them an understanding of what an interesting industry it is to be in, and it's something that people would find very rewarding as well. So I'd encourage anybody to get involved.
Sounds good. In the description I'll put some links to the STEM Ambassador program so people can see how you can get involved and the resources the Institute's got there to support anyone who wants to get out and start talking to schools about career opportunities and science.
I think in terms of skills, embrace and listen to ideas, both sort of from the people working from you and from what others are doing, and try and take those ideas and turn them into a new train track for your business and your individuals.
That's really good to hear that this whole idea of net zero is really, from what you're saying, is presenting opportunities for our industry, opportunities to get ourselves better known, opportunities to improve training and get those technologies working. And much more broadly, ever expanding skill sets for refrigeration and air conditioning engineers, so that their job becomes more and more important and more interesting, presumably, as well.
Yep, completely. Yep.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for chatting to us about education and training. It never goes away. It's always there. So I'm sure we'll be continuing on this theme as we go forward. And thanks again for taking part. And thanks to everybody for joining us. Iceberg from the Institute of Refrigeration, and I'm Miriam Rodway. We hope you're enjoying our podcasts. Please like and share and follow the podcast and join us on the next edition. Thank you.